Supreme Court to
versus ByteDance, I don't think it would change the analysis. And I can take that Washington Post hypothetical and ratchet it up a little bit to help illustrate the point. Let's suppose that the Chinese government had actually taken the Bezos children hostage, and it was using that leverage in order to force Bezos and the Washington Post to publish whatever they wanted on the front page of the Post. So China effectively has total control. I still don't think that Congress could come in and tell Bezos either sell the Post or shut it down, because that would violate Bezos's rights and the Washington Post rights. Maybe what they could do is come in and say, you need to disclose the fact that you're under this amount of coercion, so that the people who are looking at the paper understand it and can make their own assessment. But I think the First Amendment rights of both Bezos and the Post would be directly implicated, notwithstanding that China in that scenario has effectively total control over what gets printed in the Washington Post.
Counsel, let me break this down. I understand your argument that there is a First Amendment right that the U.S. company has. I'll go that far with you, okay?
I'll take it.
Because we're affecting their ability to talk in whatever way they choose. The Washington Post could choose without any influence or threat against the children of Mr. Bezos to promote Chinese policy, and our First Amendment would permit them to do that if they chose it independently, correct?
Yes.
Now the question becomes, so it's not, that's just a given that they have a First Amendment right. The next question is, assuming they do, what's the level of scrutiny we apply? Isn't that what the issue here is?
That is certainly one of the issues, Your Honor.
All right. So if we get to that side of the issue, that tik-tok USA has some sort of First Amendment right, taking your example, if the government said no speaker is free to speak under a criminal compulsion by someone else because of extortion, because of kidnapping, we are doing this because it is the only way to ensure the safety of people, that they are not going to be kidnapped or threatened, their lives threatened. You don't think that the government has a compelling state interest in saying, if there is a threat, a physical criminal threat against someone to do some activity, that the government couldn't say, I'm not questioning whatever the content is of that activity. I'm simply saying we, in our governmental powers, have a right to say, you can't do that. You can't speak.
Sure, Your Honor. So to take your question in pieces, I do think that they would have a compelling interest in that scenario to do something. But what I don't think is that they could simply target speakers in speech. Take, for example, generally applicable laws like the
So
trading.
you think in that situation that the only thing the government could do is tell the Washington Post, disclose to the public that you are saying this because you are being forced to?
So, sure.
That's the only remedy the government could undertake?
No, Your Honor, but I want to make sure I understand the hypothetical. The compelling interest is in preventing this kind of compulsion, coercion, and ultimately harm to children. And I think that the government has a lot of different ways they can address that through speech-neutral laws. And I was going to point to things like the Trading with the Enemy Act or Russia sanctions. You can broadly say and attack problems.
They haven't been very effective.
Well, be that as
we're still having people kidnapped. We're still having coercion.
And be that as it may, you can say to
so I guess what they're saying is, so the question she's asking is, you are saying this because you are being forced to. What does that even mean? Hey, we have a duty to tell on thy neighbor, basically. If you know something, say something. That's what she's saying. right? In simple terms, in layman's terms, because that confused me the whole time. I'm like, what is she talking about? What is she even asking him? And I think that's what he's trying to ask her, but he's not coming out and saying it. Like, hey, what are you even asking me? I don't know what that means. He's just like asking a different question. He's kind of gaslighting. But if you, hey, do we have that? Like, can you get in trouble if you know your neighbor killing people? You know your neighbor Dexter, and he's killing people. Do you have a duty to tell? Like, is it against the law? Is it a crime? No. You could not tell. And you could morally, it's like, oh, you're a bad person. Why you ain't tell when he was killing? He's Jeffrey Dahmer. That morally, yeah, you're a bad person, and people should shun you out of society. You should be like, oh, what? And people should, when you go to work, if they know this, should be like, what the hell? Like, you ain't tell? You let that motherfucker? Like, did you help him? People should question you. Your morals should be up for judgment every time somebody know that story that you knew that your neighbor was a serial killer. You ain't tell on him, but maybe you gangster. And you like Brick Baby and Whack 100 or something. I don't know. But what they missing, what he should bring up is their corporations. They're trying to make it seem like TikTok is a person and this one person. Like, oh, yeah, if the Chinese government is targeting somebody through TikTok and they're able to get people or get their email address and where they at and see what they're doing and all the communication, do they have a duty to tell? And he's like, no, people don't. People don't. First Amendment, blah, blah. This is a company. If you go to your local pond and start dumping toxic waste in the river and the police see you, going to jail. And you're going to be fined with every fish that die. You probably going to be doing 20 years when they rack up at this and environment that and on government property or state property, blah, blah, blah. If a company do that, they might just get a fine. So there should be different rules, and like it should be a word that like, nah, this is a corporation. It's different expectation. So I have no problem with saying, hey, you're a company that we allow us to be on, and we allow our kids to be on, and people that we love to be on. We're sharing personal things, and we're recording stuff and giving people our images. And look, guys, look what I got in the mail, blah, blah, blah. And we're trusting you, and we're giving you our address so we can put stuff in the TikTok shop and all this. Yeah, you should be held to a certain level of trust. And, hey, we're trusting. There should be like a general trust law. Like, hey, if we doing this and you're coordinated with multiple countries, right? Blah, blah, blah. It should be some type of like pact. If you're allowing our kids to access this and China to access that, and we can access China kids and they can access Russian kids, and if you're any type of meeting place like X, Facebook, Meta, whatever, Truth, whatever you like to use, it should be a reasonable thing that, listen, you should be like, everybody should be Switzerland. Windows open for everybody. Everybody could come here, but you shouldn't be doing that. If you know any information, say something. If you know that, I don't know how they would know. Do they have that? Like, if they're not helping them, or maybe they're not helping them, so they don't have that duty. Like, they should just be like I said, Switzerland. Like, I ain't in it. I'm not helping the U.S. target y'all. I'm not helping China target y'all. They could do it if they want, but we're not giving them no extra help. Now, if they're giving them extra help, then as an American, you're the enemy. Get out. So there should be some like thing. We could access to it to see that they're not helping us, and they could get data to see that we're not helping them. Whatever. I don't know how you do it, but a corporation and the person is different. But they're treating it like it's a person, and I think that companies that do that toxic waste and stuff should be held accountable. Just saying.
Americans, you cannot collaborate with our enemies at all, and if you do that, you're going to be severely punished for doing
All
that.
right, we can go on to the effectiveness of the remedy, but the point is, I believe, that even if your First Amendment rights are impinged and there is some protection, the question is at what level of scrutiny?
Yes, Your Honor.
And whether that the action is content neutral or not.
I agree that that is the way that the analysis proceeds. Here, we believe that the level of scrutiny should be strict scrutiny.
What is the relevance of the history? Chief Judge Srinivasan, in his opinion, in the D.C. Circuit, emphasized that there is a long tradition of preventing foreign ownership or control of media in the United States, going back radio, television, and what have you. I would think no matter the level of scrutiny, that history has to be important, and I want to get your response to it.
I don't actually think it's important in this context, because that history all arises in the context of bandwidth scarcity. And in that context, you have the government that's in the position of doling out a limited number of licenses. And when you have to dole out a limited number of licenses, you by definition have to pick winners and losers. And when you have to do that, you get a certain amount of discretion. I think that's the whole basis of those cases. You can't really take those cases
keep going.
You can't really take those cases and extend them to an area where there is no scarcity, like the World Wide Web, because once you do that, there's really no limiting principle. There's no reason why it wouldn't also apply to really popular books or magazines or newspapers or chains of newspapers. The bandwidth scarcity, I think, is really what justifies the greater discretion that the government gets in that area.
Mr. Francisco, let me see if I can break this down. Suppose that TikTok were outright owned by the People's Republic of China. Would you make the same argument?
I wouldn't be making the same argument, Your Honor.
Why not?
Because there you would have to confront a very different question, whether a foreign government that was speaking in the United States First Amendment rights, and I don't know that the court has ever addressed that, but here we've got a U.S.
No, I understand that. I just want to see where you draw the line. So it's true, the court has never held that a foreign government has free speech rights, and if we were to hold that, I would think it would be because speech by a foreign government, particularly one with enormous resources, is not protected. Allowing that does not serve the underlying interests of the First Amendment, which are, among other things, fostering democratic self-government and furthering the search for truth. So let's assume that we start with that, all right? What if TikTok were then not owned by the foreign government, but it was undisputed that TikTok was totally controlled by the foreign government, could not do one thing without the approval of the foreign government? That's different?
I do think that it is different, Your Honor. For example, I've given the hypothetical that I've given, but there are a lot of companies in this country that have foreign owners, not just companies like Politico, which is German-owned, or Al Jazeera, which is partly owned by the government of Qatar.
Well, I understand that, but what would be the reason for drawing that line?
Sure,
if there's a good reason for saying that a foreign government, particularly an adversary, does not have free speech rights in the United States, why would it all change if it was simply hidden under some kind of contrived corporate structure?
Because it is a U.S. speaker. I'll give you another example. AMC movie theaters used to be owned by a Chinese company. Under this theory...
Listen, he's got to quote the preamble or something, like whatever you call it. Every man is created equal. We believe that every man is created equal. We still give illegal immigrants that come over here like freedoms. We don't hold them hostage and like Guantanamo Bay and don't allow them, hey, you're not from America, you ain't got no rights, you can't talk, shut up. Shush. What are you talking about? Like, come on, this is just like a moral thing. Like, morally, we don't care if they have like foreign owners. Some people feeding their whole family right now because of TikTok. I buy my dude wipes off of TikTok. What are you talking about? Like, no, nah. He should just make a moral argument. Like, morally, like, what are you saying? The implications to that, to say that China doesn't, if you from China and you come over here, what happens if you come over here with a green card or with a student visa and you just here to go to school? You're going to say, and then maybe they get arrested. Like somebody send their kid over here, they college age, 19, 20, 21, and maybe they do something stupid, speed. Does the policeman get to pull them over and say, hey, no, shut up. You're on a student visa. You're not American. You don't have the right to talk. No, come on. Think about the implications to that.
theory, Congress could order AMC movie theaters to censor any movies that Congress doesn't like or promote any movies that Congress wanted. And I think the reason is that here, where it's conceded, you actually have a bona fide U.S. company. It is not simply a Chinese cutout that is the Chinese government speaking itself,
All right,
but
let's
an
say that's not
independent
a
United States
complete,
company.
let's say this is not a complete answer to your First Amendment argument, but would you be willing to concede that this is a very important factor that should be taken into account in deciding whether there's a First Amendment violation?
Well, Your Honor, I think that it does help supply a compelling governmental interest, but I still think you have to march through the strict scrutiny analysis and analyze their interests. I do not think that they have a compelling governmental interest in the manipulation of content. I think that is in the teeth of the First Amendment, and if you look at the government's brief and the rest of the record in this case, that's really what it's focused on. Their complaint is the fear that the content could be critical of the United States government or could undermine our democracy. Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Francisco, I just wanted to follow up on that line of questioning with just some fact questions, because it seems to me there are a couple of things that the parties still dispute about facts in this court, which is a little unusual. The government says that TikTok, U.S., has no authority or ability to alter the algorithm or recommendation engine, but must simply follow ByteDance's directives. You disagree with that in your reply brief.
Yes,
somebody
we do.
has to be right and somebody has to be wrong about that. What's the fact? What does the record show?
Well, Your Honor, we are here on a record, and there is nothing in the record that says that TikTok, like any other subsidiary, doesn't have its own independent making authority. If you look at their record sites, what they point to is the ordinary types of control that a parent company has over a subsidiary company, but it doesn't change the fact.
All right, what is the fact? Are you prepared to make a representation?
Yes, Your Honor.
Here?
The fact is that TikTok Incorporated, as a U.S. company, does have a choice over the algorithm. Now, it would be an incredibly bad business decision for them to abandon this algorithm, and they very doubtful would ever do it, but they have that authority. What they clearly have the authority to do is shut down the platform in the face of Chinese pressure. That's actually what they agreed to do in the National Security Agreement. I think that underscores why TikTok Incorporated, as a U.S. company, does have its own set of First Amendment rights.
Okay. And then another fact question. Before the D.C. Circuit, you argued that the Chinese government has made clear in public statements that it would not permit a forced divestment of the recommendation engine. Does that mean that some key component of the recommendation engine is under Chinese control?
No, Your Honor. What it means, and this might warrant a little more explanation, what it means is that there are lots of parts of the source code that are embodied in intellectual property that are owned by the Chinese government, and they would restrict, like the United States restricts the sale of those types of things to foreign governments. It doesn't alter the fact that this is being operated in the United States by TikTok Incorporated.
Okay.
So
I got it.
Okay.
I got it. And then you represent that the divestiture is not feasible within the Act's time frame. I'm sorry for these fact questions.
Sure.
But I just want to understand what's before us.
Yeah.
Would it be feasible in any time frame?
Listen, we really don't care. I hope you don't care what these people even think. They love giving us a good guy and a bad guy, and the Chinese government is evil. They make everything. If the Chinese government wanted to poison us, they could put lead and a bunch of other secret chemicals in our food, and the chemicals and the seasoning salt and the Jordans and the Air Force Ones. They could put some things that have just been toxic, giving us all cancer for years. The Chinese government could get to us. They make our clothes. They make everything. What are you talking about? People out here building their own PCs, and half of it probably come from China. Stop playing. We don't care. They're going to use TikTok. We got VPNs and everything. People make sports bets in different states and gamble thousands of dollars with VPNs on their phone. Listen, this is just to keep us looking at this, and this, I'm listening to this and like, what is it that they don't want us to know? Because this is just silly. Like, they need to protect us from it, blah, and the Chinese government is evil. And then I'm sure in China they say the American government is evil. And the people suffering in China and working paycheck to paycheck just like we are in America. This is stupid, and it is nonsensical. Like, they don't want to. We should be like together. It shouldn't even be cities and different countries anymore. We should have like United Citizens of Earth IDs and be working with Elon and Jeff Bezos to get us out in space, and he built the houses out there, and Elon built the transportation, and we should be thinking Federation of Earth shit now. Like, this is nonsense. Russia's not evil. China's not evil. We're not evil. People in Iran not evil. It's all the governments. They're playing us, and they going out to dinner and sending their ambassadors and paying it like blah, 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 blah. They just playing us like chess pieces, and it's stupid now. They got ChatGPT writing their scripts because it's getting. They gave us Kamala. What the fuck was that? This whole thing is stupid, bro. And they want to say, oh, this and that, and now it's Trump and Elon and all this and that, and it's the Democrats and it's the Republicans, and then they going out to lunch every day on a golf course together, like, ha, what bill or we're not gonna pass today? We need to give our people, and they're asking AIPAC, hey, what can we do for you today? What do you want? Netanyahu can do what he wants, and we worry about this. Come on.
I take the government doesn't dispute that it's infeasible in the 270 days provided by law. But would it be
Your Honor, I think at least as we understand how they've interpreted the qualified divestiture provision, it would be exceedingly difficult under any time frame for two principal reasons. The first is that there's a global team of engineers that are some in China, some in Europe, some in the United States that maintain and update the original source code. And as we understand their interpretation, a qualified divestiture would prohibit any kind of coordination with that global team of engineers.
Not to mention, if TikTok has a headquarters in the United States and we have engineers working there from the United States, what makes them think that these people are going to just let Chinese take everything and all this information about us, and you're going to have developers and engineers there? You know how nosy people is? You think they're going to be like, oh, all this information going to China, we ain't going to say this. We had Edward Snowden go against the U.S. military. Now he got hide up in Russia. You don't think they ain't going to tell? Come on, they're going to be doing a TikTok about it. As soon as they fire somebody, one of the engineers is going to be like, listen, I worked at TikTok. He's going to be on TikTok saying, I used to work at TikTok, and this is what I need you to know. Come on, we protect each other. The American people will protect us. Y'all just supposed to lower the figure out taxes and shit. That's all y'all supposed to do. Figure out big arguments if it get too much, and keep each other honest. Like y'all just trying to play us, man.
The other reason is because, as we understand how they're interpreting it, a qualified divestiture would divorce the U.S. platform from the global content. So, for example, there are videos created in the United States. There are videos created in Ireland. In order to get global content, we need access to the Irish videos. They need access to the U.S. videos. We understand that couldn't happen.
Okay, so you think it's probably not feasible in any timeline?
Well, Your Honor, I think it'd be extraordinarily difficult.
Okay, last fact question, then I'll yield the floor here. The government admits that it has no evidence that TikTok has engaged in covert content manipulation in this country, but says that ByteDance has responded to PRC demands to censor content outside of China in other countries. Again, you deny that in your reply brief. Somebody has to be right about that.
Well, Your Honor, the problem there is everything that follows what you just read is redacted, and so I don't know what it says. What the record shows is two things. The record shows, first, what you just said. They haven't done anything here in the United States with respect to TikTok Incorporated. And second, the record also shows through our transparency reports that we haven't removed or restricted content on the TikTok platform in other parts of the world. And TikTok doesn't operate in China, it operates in other parts of the world. We haven't removed or restricted content at the request of China. That's what we put out in our regular transparency
Removed or restricted, though, doesn't necessarily cover covert content manipulation, though, right?
Well, Your Honor, I'm limiting my response to what's in the record.
Okay.
It's very difficult for me to respond to things that I don't know what the accusation is.
I have other questions about the secret evidence in this case, but we'll get to that later.
Yes, Your
Mr.
Honor.
Francisco, can I ask you a question about the relevant speech here? So it strikes me that this is a little different than your Bezos example, because there it's clearly content discrimination because we're talking about the ability to post particular articles versus other articles. Am I right? Algorithm is the speech here.
Yes, Your Honor. I would say the algorithm is a lot of things. The algorithm has built within it, it's basically how we predict what our customers want to see.
The editorial discretion.
Yeah, the editorial discretion. It also has built within it the moderation elements. All of this kind of comes together when the source code is translated into executable code in the United States. In the United States, that executable code is then subject to vetting, review, moderation through content moderation algorithms, and so it ultimately lands on the TikTok platform.
But what we're talking about as a net choice is the editorial discretion that underlies the algorithm. And I just want to be clear, a lot of your examples talk about, including the Bezos one, the right of an American citizen to repeat what a foreign entity says or say, I'm hitching my wagon to China, I want to say everything China does. Here, the concern is about the covert content manipulation piece of the algorithm. That is something that ByteDance wants to speak, right?
Well, Your Honor, I think that ultimately it's TikTok's choice.
Look, they act like they want to save us. If TikTok decided to just post all Chinese content, people would go on, in America would go on, we'll notice that all this is Chinese content, and we're like, what the fuck? And then we'll make TikToks about how TikTok is turning into the Chinese PR firm, and Candace Owen will do a report on it, and Joe Rogan will talk about it. Everybody would talk about it. Tucker Carlson will talk about it. I'll talk about it. And everybody will start unsubscribing. And TikTok would start laying off people and they would be unemployed and out of stock. Like fucking, what do you want? MySpace. Like, what do you think? You don't need to protect us. We're grown-ups. Stop playing with us.
Choice whether to put it on the platform.
And you don't want that. Is your client disclaiming
we absolutely resist any kind of content manipulation by China at all. But what I do want to focus in on is what their asserted interests here. They do talk about covertness, but it can't possibly be that all they're concerned about is mere covertness. If all you were concerned about was the covertness untethered from the underlying content, that's something that could be easily addressed through a risk disclosure.
But that goes to scrutiny, the level of the application. Let's say that I agree with you the First Amendment is implicated, and I'm trying to figure out what level of scrutiny applies, and I'm trying to figure out what content, if any, discrimination is going on here. There's a disproportionate burden. Let's say that I agree with you about that. No one is preventing you. You're seeking access to a particular source code, engineering, the recommendation feature. It's the technology that you want. You're not trying to repeat, as in the Bezos example, if we take the speech that the government's concerned about to be the covert content manipulation rationale, you're not seeking to utter that speech.
That's correct, Your Honor. What we are seeking to do is use an algorithm that displays the combination of content that we prefer our users to see on the platform.
And the government doesn't care about that. The government is fine with you doing that. You can invent it yourself. It doesn't even care what content that displays, cat videos or whatever.
Yeah, but I think that the way that the analysis has to unfold is first you ask, is this law burdening our speech? I think we agree that the law is burdening our speech. Then you have to look at whether the law itself is somehow content-based, not just what their motivations are, but whether the law is content-based. And here, the trigger for this law, the one thing that gets it going, is if you operate a social media platform that has user-generated content, unless that content takes the form of a product, travel, or business review. Then within that universe of content, it says there's one speaker we're particularly concerned about, and we're going to hammer home on that one speaker. And then just to make the rubble bounce, they come in and tell us that one of the reasons they're targeting that speaker is because they're worried about the future content content on that platform, that it could in the future somehow be critical of the United States or undermine democracy, to pull examples from the government's brief. So I think there's no way to get around the fact that this is a content-based speech restriction, and you do have to go directly to what their interests are. Now, their principal interest is...
I think I'm a little bit surprised by one of the answers that you gave to Justice Barrett. I had understood that TikTok's essential complaint here is that they wouldn't be able to use the algorithm that ByteDance has invented, and that they want to use the algorithm that ByteDance has invented.
100%. And if I was unclear on that, Your Honor, I apologize. That is
okay, because I
absolutely
think
the core
what
of the
Justice
claim.
Barrett was saying to you is like, what's the problem here? Because ByteDance is a foreign company. Or maybe this isn't what Justice Barrett says, it's just what I say. ByteDance is a foreign company, and you started off with Justice Alito saying, you know, well, we would be making a different argument, and of course that's true. I mean, I would think that Alliance for Open Society makes it pretty clear that you have to be making a different argument with respect to a foreign state or a foreign company. So let's say that they don't have First Amendment rights. The only First Amendment rights lie in TikTok, which does have First Amendment rights. I guess my question is, how are those First Amendment rights really being implicated here? This statute says the foreign company has to divest. Whether or not that's feasible, however long it takes, TikTok still has the ability to use whatever algorithm it wants, doesn't it?
No, Your Honor, and their rights are implicated at a most basic level. In 10 days, TikTok wants to speak. In 10 days, because this law was passed, TikTok cannot speak unless ByteDance executes a qualified divestiture. That's not just ByteDance's choice. That is a condition
Well, I
that's
realize
imposed
that
by law.
it definitely has effects on TikTok if ByteDance acts in the way that you are assuming it will act. So this is not to say that the First Amendment isn't involved, because TikTok is going to suffer some pretty severe incidental effects. But they are incidental, aren't they? Because the statute only says to this foreign company, divest or else, and leaves TikTok with the ability to do what every other actor in the United States can do, which is go find the best available algorithm.
Yeah. I very much disagree that the effects are incidental, because the way that this law works is it is only triggered if somebody is engaging in speech based on their...
She says, just go and find the best algorithm. Just hold everybody that's TikTok famous, just overnight, boom, the algorithm does a complete 180 and they just not getting found and everything messed up. We don't care about what algorithm they use. We assume that everybody could see it anyway, not just China, where it gets sold to everybody, the highest bidder probably. Our lives, most people ain't that interesting. They ain't criminals. They ain't doing them weird loans. You ain't looking in their house or trying to take their money out their bank account. We don't care if you can see our Facebook pictures. What are you, come on.
Content, user-generated content, except for business, product, and travel reviews. It then singles out a single speaker, and you have the concession for the government that one of the reasons they've singled out that speaker...
A lot of emphasis on the idea of just like, I think what you're basically saying is that all speaker-based restrictions generate strict scrutiny. I'm not sure that we've ever said anything like that. Let's put aside your argument that this is facially content-based. It seems to me that your stronger argument, or at least the one that most interested me, was this argument of, look, if the government is doing something specifically for the purpose of changing the content that people see, that has to be subject to strict scrutiny. But I don't see that as affecting TikTok, as opposed...
Listen, the government in our states and cities and everybody else, we got trash on TV. We got trash music, got drill rap, not even real rap, like bars. But you're not a good choice. Look at the people, we all a little overweight, everything, the food's unhealthy, RFK Jr. trying to change stuff. The FDA? Are you kidding me? They got the nerve to pretend like our government's protecting us and making the best decision for us and this and trans and everything else and all this thing. What? We don't give a fuck if China maybe they're trying to show us something interesting. Who knows? Maybe they're trying to show, you see the Russia and Putin show Black Jesus. Like, maybe they're trying to show us some stuff. Like, hey, stop acting like you got the best. Oh, China got MSG. We champs from Chinese food. We don't give a fuck. Stop acting like we make the best decision. Like, she tripping. Like, they want to make China the enemy so bad. China ain't ever did nothing bad to me. Come on.
To as affecting ByteDance.
Well, no.
Hell, it's the Indian that's known to call you for your credit card, scam grandmas and shit, and the office building is a legit thing in the daytime, and then in the nighttime it's completely something else, and they calling you, hey, pretending they Microsoft and stuff. Look, stop playing. We love the people of China.
I very much do see it as affecting TikTok because they choose this algorithm because it reflects the mix of content. The government's fear is that China could come in and pressure TikTok through ByteDance to TikTok to alter that mix of content to make it too pro-Chinese or too anti-American. That is very much directly a content-based charge straight at TikTok. The other point I would like
I hear you that it might very well have that effect. I guess what I'm suggesting is that the law is only targeted at this foreign corporation which doesn't have First Amendment rights. Whatever effect it has, it has. You know, maybe ByteDance will figure out a way to, like, put this on open source, and then TikTok will be able to use the algorithm.
So, Your Honor, if I could take that on directly, because
That's stupid. See what she just said? She said, oh, so ByteDance, that's the stupidest shit right there. What? She just said ByteDance could put it on open source, and then TikTok could be like, oh, okay, it's open source. Now we can use it because everybody can use it. But if ByteDance only, the same algorithm, no changes, but because they own it, then they could change it. Or that they got ties to China. What? He didn't catch on that? Like, that's the stupidest argument. So y'all okay with the code? Y'all just don't want China to have any, like, profit off of it somehow. Because it's the same code. That's like, we're not anti-Chinese. We're defensive about it, right? When did America become anti-Chinese? We anti, like, their government attacking us, so cool. But we really don't worry about that because if it's us, China, and Russia, if somebody fire a nuke, everybody fire a nuke, we all dead. So there's not really, nobody gonna do that. Right? The Americans that's probably in charge of the nuke could probably, like, not even really give the president the fucking bomb. Like, let's fire a nuke. They be like, what? Like, somebody gonna go live and tell us, and we gonna be like, hell nah. And everybody gonna riot or something, hopefully. But nah, come on.
I think TikTok has First Amendment rights. To the extent ByteDance is speaking in the United States, it, I believe, has First Amendment rights. If you conclude that neither has First Amendment rights, then surely the creators have First Amendment rights. But if you take a step back, what their position is that none of these entities, this is the universe of entities affected by this law, none of these entities have the authority to assert First Amendment rights, which means that the government really could come in and say, I'm going to shut down TikTok because it's too pro-Republican or too pro-Democrat or won't disseminate the speech I want, and that would get no First Amendment scrutiny by anybody. That cannot possibly be the case. Yet that is the effect of their position. The last point I'd like to emphasize, though, is this law, like the Playboy case, like the Hobby Lobby case, has built within it a less restrictive alternative, which is the general provision, by definition designed to protect against the very harm the government is identifying. Suppose New York State passes an asbestos abatement law. They say these types of buildings have to abate asbestos. In addition, New York Times, you have to abate asbestos in your building, and they say there are two reasons for this. One, we want to abate asbestos. Two, we hate the New York Times editorial page. Surely, at the very least, what you're going to say is you can't target the New York Times directly. What you can do is throw them into the general process.
Thank you,
we think that's the minimum that should be done here.
Thank you, Counsel. We've been talking about connection between the regulation of TikTok and the burden on expressive conduct. And your basic position is that interfering with the ownership of TikTok constitutes a direct regulation of the expressive conduct of other people. What is your best example in our precedent of a situation where a regulation of corporate structure or something else has been treated as a direct regulation of expressive conduct?
The regulation of a corporate structure as Your Honor, I don't have a case at my fingertips. I can consult.
Well, I don't have one at my tips or any other
rebuttal,
but
I think it's quite clear, though, that if you're saying to a company, you have to stop talking unless somebody else does something, and that's imposed by the force of law, it directly affects that company's speech.
Well, it's again, I don't know if it's directly affecting the company's speech or the speech of third parties, and I'm not sure what, where your emphasis is. But again, I'm not sure there's another case where we've said that regulating a company others' expression should be treated as direct imposition on their speech in terms of the standard of review, for example, when it's based on derivative regulation of corporate structure of somebody else.
Well, Your Honor, I think that I would concede that this is a pretty unprecedented case. I'm not aware of any time in American history where the Congress has tried to shut down a major speech platform. But I think that if a law imposes a direct regulation on a third party, that in turn results in shutting down somebody else's speech, and they do it for content-based, viewpoint-based reasons, and in particular on this record, because the speaker that is ultimately being shut down, they don't like the speech of that particular platform, that's a real problem.
So it may be a real problem or may not, but I just am wondering if there's any precedent where we have that same connection and that it affects the standard of review, for example. You would treat it as a direct restriction on expression. Even the only thing the law does is say, in this case, somebody other than the Chinese government has to own.
So we don't have any direct precedent along the lines that you're citing, but we do have precedents. We have cases like ACARA, and what ACARA says is if the law is totally speech neutral, then that's one thing. We have cases like O'Brien, which say if the law doesn't care about speech but happens to draw in speech, that's another thing. Both of those cases make clear, however, is that when the law is concerned with the content of the speech, when the justification is based on the content of the speech, that's cases like Reed 2, then you do trigger strict scrutiny.
So then I think your argument comes down to, is this direct concern with speech, or is it concerned with the potential for Chinese interference with the level of interference indirectly? In other words, they're not coming back. The Chinese government, TikTok, doesn't care what the people are saying on TikTok. That's not the concern. The concern is that they are regulating a particular channel of communication. And I just wonder if there's any precedent for that type of thing. They're not saying we're going to restrict this content and that content, but not this. They're just saying we're going to be in a position where we can control what happens, whether it's based on expression, whether it's based on anything else.
So, Your Honor, I disagree, and I think if you take a step back and look at this record, I think it is quite clear that it is focused on both current and potential future content on TikTok, TikTok Incorporated. Here you don't have just an act that is based on speakers and speech. It's triggered by speech. It's focused on a single speaker, TikTok Incorporated.
Justice Thomas, anything further? Justice Alito?
What if Congress, if there were nothing in this act about content moderation or covert manipulation, what if it was just about preventing what Congress viewed as an enormously powerful, popular application from gathering an arsenal of information about American citizens, and they said this is the worst offender and we're going to require divestiture by this offender? Would there be a First Amendment problem there? And if you think there would be, what would the level of scrutiny be?
Yes, there would be a First Amendment problem if you had a law like this that was only focused on speakers, those who use user-generated content other than product, travel, or business.
Well, Congress concludes that this particular entity is the worst. This is the worst offender, and it happens to be an entity that is involved with speech.
If all you had, so I want to make sure I understand the hypothetical. The only provision you have is one that says this company has to shut down because of data security.
Right.
I would have a different set of arguments. I think it would still implicate the First Amendment, particularly where you have strong evidence that they were being targeted in part, at least because of their speakers and speech. Suppose Congress passed the law that you posited.
Well, you're changing the hypothetical by injecting congressional concern about the
Okay, well, I'll put that to the side.
So what would your argument be? It would be an equal protection argument?
No, I'd still be saying that ACARA itself makes clear that where a law disproportionately burdens just a speaker, we have to subject that to scrutiny to suss it out, to suss out whether the asserted interest is the actual interest. There, the asserted interest is in data security. I think I would have a couple of arguments under whatever form of scrutiny you wanted to apply, whether it is strict scrutiny or intermediate scrutiny in that context. I would say first that law is dramatically under-inclusive because it categorically exempts e-commerce apps that this record shows have comparable ties to China.
You say, I don't want to prolong this too much. You say this is not like ACARA, I think primarily because you say that the divestiture requires the new company to cease using the algorithm, right?
No, I think it's not like ACARA for a much more fundamental sense. ACARA involved a totally speech-neutral law. It didn't go after speakers at all. If you had a law in ACARA that said we're going to
Speech, correct?
Correct.
All right. So if I get past that, if I go to Justice Alito's point, which is I don't think it's just about speech, it's about data control. If it's about data control, and assume, for the sake of argument, that I believe intermediate scrutiny applies to the data control provision, then your arguments would be different, wouldn't they? They would be under-inclusiveness, they would be other arguments, correct?
Well, I think they'd be very similar because I think
Because of the users who want to associate and want to partner with this foreign corporation, the foreign corporation ends up having, in your view, the exact same First Amendment rights as your users do. In other words, it's irrelevant that the foreign corporation doesn't have First Amendment rights.
I don't think it's irrelevant because you could imagine a situation where no American distributor or speaker wants to work with that. But let me put it to you this way. Communist Manifesto, written by Karl Marx, has no First Amendment standing on its own in America. But if a bookstore wants to sell that publication, I don't think Congress can prevent it from doing so.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that was a good one.
No.
I'm good.
Okay.
Oh.
So I want to press you a little bit on the distinction.
No.
They could act with respect to ByteDance. Why isn't this Congress acting with respect to ByteDance in the sense that all it's doing is saying ByteDance has to divest?
First Amendment right to receive.
So would I be right to say that your position is that because of the users who want to associate and want to partner with this foreign corporation, the foreign corporation ends up having, in your view, the exact same First Amendment rights as your users do? In other words, it's irrelevant that the foreign corporation doesn't have First Amendment rights.
I don't think it's irrelevant because you could imagine a situation where no American distributor or speaker wants to work with that. But let me put it to you this way. Communist Manifesto, written by Karl Marx, has no First Amendment standing on its own in America. But if a bookstore wants to sell that publication, I don't think Congress can prevent it from doing so.
Well,
Did you hear the man spit? Watch it. Look.
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm fine.
No.
I'm good.
Okay. So I want to.
Did you hear my man spit? Not only did he spit, but she got like that was two intellectuals talking to each other, and she got like, ooh. No, he didn't. You see her voice? You see the voice fluctuation? I don't know how old this justice is.
Of the creator Americans who want to use this platform to speak to other Americans. So the first thing is what the act does, as you said, Justice Kagan, is prevent us from working with a application that is owned by ByteDance that uses this. That's how it comes to this court.
It's interesting.
asked whether Congress would.
that way, how would this be under-inclusive?
Oh my
Justice
God.
Sotomayor, I don't think a lot of the
Justice
suppositions you're
Sotomayor,
making.
He spit, that young man spit knowledge to her. He said, if I want to buy the Communist Manifesto, they can. Are you kidding me? Yes, we could. This is America. We don't need your protection. Like I said, we got problems with the FDA and everything else and COVID vaccine. Was they necessary? Did we need 18 boosters? We don't know. RFK said they put dye in our food. We about to die. We want them to fix that. We're going to do what we want. Put the VPN on. Shut up. Stop. If we want it, we don't care about China. We want to go to China. Most Americans hope to be rich enough to be able to take the day off to go to China and visit it. We love Chinese movies. You can go. Come on. We got Wu-Tang Clan. Wu-Tang Clan is one of the best rap groups of all time. Those the Chinese heritage. They all through that. Like all these people, the Killer Bees, whatever, like they, come on, black people and Kung Fu go together. The Chinese store, we love the Chinese store. They got the best. Listen, let me get chicken wings fried hard with the lo mein or the duck fried rice or the pork fried rice. Come on, it don't matter. We love Chinese people. Stop playing. Stop. We don't care. They can have our stuff. People selling stuff on TikTok. We bought the little cat thing from, like the little self thing from TikTok. It don't matter. Stop playing with us. We protect ourselves. You just lower these food prices so we can stop living paycheck to paycheck. We don't care about this. We don't care about X and all these people. We enjoy ourselves, come home from work, take the day, calm ourselves down, look through TikTok, laugh, social media, a bunch of stuff. We see the nasty Indian street food, whatever. We laugh at it. Ha ha ha. We laugh at each other. And then we go to bed and do it over again. Stop acting like this Chinese app is dangerous. Like, we don't care. If they want to show us Chinese stuff, then we'll get off of the app. And something else will pop up and replace that. Before this was Vine. Vine got corny. You got TikTok. TikTok get corny. We're going to be something else. Relax. Man, let me know what y'all want, fellas. There's some good stuff right here. You should really listen to the rest of it.
Actually bear out in
Content harvesting.
their perspective. If you boil it down to an essence,
Okay,
the
let me know
owner
what y'all
of a
think,
print
though, man.
media
One.